Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Top Floor CEO podcast. I'm delighted to welcome Alex Hewitt of AOK Events. He's got an amazing story he's going to share with us. 24 years ago, he founded this business. He's navigated several challenges, COVID. He got some of the top brands like Innocent, Red Bull, and LinkedIn come to him for the events, for the employee engagement, for the client engagement. He's also benefiting his employees by setting up an ownership trust also to the level that he's actually won awards to be a great place to work. So how did he start it? How did he navigate the challenges? How has he now got a successful business over 24 years? You're going to hear all of it on his podcast. So delighted to welcome Alex Hewitt.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
So pleasure, Alex. So just start at the beginning. So maybe firstly, what got you into an events?
Um, I had a strange route into events in that I was very lucky that my parents sent me to a posh private school where I became the first pupil for some years to fail all of his A levels. I was convinced I was going to become a professional cricketer, so I spent all of my time playing cricket. So after I did that, my father got me a job in the city. Absolutely hated that as well. And then a friend of mine got me a job working as a barman in our local pub, close to a little pretty village near Gatwick Airport. And the first day I stood behind a bar, I absolutely fell in love with being a barman. Just loved different people coming in every day, making them welcome. Didn't matter if it's a local farmer or the Air New Zealand air crew coming in. You had to make sure that everybody left having had a better time or in a better mood than they were when they kind of first arrived. And with extraordinary set of circumstances, within 5 months of working there, I'd become the youngest pub landlord in England.
Fantastic.
I can still remember the look on the magistrate's face at Crawley Magistrates Court when she gave me the license. And that was my university. I lived upstairs. It was, I was given the keys to a very grown-up sweet shop. But lived upstairs and very quickly had to get my head around sales, marketing, accounting, HR. It was 80 hours a week, and I loved absolutely every minute. And I did that for 3 years, and then the lease that the owners had expired. And one of my other regulars, who worked at Marriott at the time, a large events company, no longer trading under that name. Thought, my love of sport and the knowledge I've gained from running a pub. I mean, I'd learned to cook, learned about beer or wine. He thought I might be quite good at selling corporate hospitality. And he gave me a job. And to my astonishment, one of my other regulars at a leaving party said, make sure I'm the first person you call when you get your feet under the desk. And she was the global head of events for IBM UK.
Wow.
And they were my first client.
Fantastic. So
So I went and worked for him and then kind of swapped around for a few different jobs, learned a little bit about conference production at a production agency for 4 or 5 years. And then in the year 2000, actually, fair play, my then fiance, knowing that we were going to get married and, hopefully having children at some stage in the future, kind of said to me one evening, you've always wanted to have your own agency. If you're going to do it, I think now would be a really, really good time. So
why was that point a good time?
well, because she had quite a good job in advertising, and so we had enough money to survive with me taking a pay cut, leaving former sales director job at this production agency, and going down to bare bones salary. And pre-marriage, pre-children, was able to give it absolutely everything without any distractions, to kind of get the business off the ground. And I was fortunate and lucky and clever for two colleagues of mine from the previous agency asked if they could come with me, one of whom, Joe Greenstock, still sits next door to me. 24 years on. Well, actually, we've been working together for 28 years.
Wow.
And so when I started AOK Events, there were three of us, two of us in sales and an event manager. And when we started the company, really, we were a corporate hospitality broker, but so many of our clients, pleased with their day at Wimbledon or Chelsea Flower Show or whatever it was, started saying, well, will you help us with our Christmas party or an overseas golf trip or a team building event or whatever over a period of years.
Well, they suggested that to you rather than you suggesting that to them.
Yeah, we were the least curious company ever.
Okay.
We were a lifestyle business, and really we were for the first 10 years of our existence. And again, my youngest, if I started again, I would be more curious. I think when you start a business, you're always so grateful that a company gives you some business that you forget to ask if they've got any more. And actually, most consumers, once they've built up a relationship with an agency or a brand, they're really happy for that relationship, to continue evolving. But we forgot about that for about the first 10 years of our life. But we had to survive, 9/11 in 2001. So I think there were four of us by then. But when we saw the Twin Towers under attack, obviously the financial kind of markets crashed. But everybody forgets a side effect of 9/11 was the sort of mega growth of mobile phones.
Right.
It was the global event that saw parents buying mobile phones for all of their children.
Don't they regret it now, don't they?
Yeah, yes, they absolutely, yeah, they absolutely do. Good point. So whilst we lost quite a lot of our banking clients and stuff like that, we did masses with mobile phone companies, and we've always targeted larger.
Was that you being proactive or you receiving some inbound leads?
A little bit of the two. That's a very good point. A little bit of the two. And we were fortunate in that a number of people, called us up. T-Mobile, Orange, Virgin Mobile. We had relationships with them all, but they had marketing budgets the likes of which we'd never really seen before at AOK events. Banks and law firms were relatively cautious, 20 years ago, and mobile phone brands came along and just started spending really quite a lot of money on incentives, corporate hospitality, parties, and they were joined by, early tech companies. Our biggest
Was that
was
mainly for customers or potential clients or clients they were looking?
they were so the Wanna-Do, which is now Microsoft advertising,
Yeah.
effectively. We we took a stand out at a trade show. And I still remember at that trade show, I think I had 15, it was like a speed dating event. It was run by Forum Events, so I think it was still very much in existence. I had 15 30-minute meetings, over the course of the day. But we came back with Wanna-Do, WH Smith and Ladbrokes as clients who weren't just clients from corporate hospitality. They just decided they'd gone to find an agency to outsource all of their client events through. And we were just clever around our marketing. And once you've got one good client in a particular sector, we've always found it relatively easy to open other doors in that sector by saying that we're already working with one, so we understand the pressures that you're under and the sort of customers that you're looking to attract. And we take it from there.
So the transition from corporate hospitality to client events, was there a lot of learning you had to do about how to deliver those things?
Well, yeah, because we were clueless. I mean, I'm an idiot. I haven't had any training. I didn't pass any qualifications, of any sort. So I would say the best thing that we did in terms of delivering, we were delivering. There was a company, part of Barclays, called Barclays Global Investors. So by 2005, 2006, we were delivering all of their live events, all of their conferences. So we're talking, conferences at Old Billingsgate for 700, 800, people, large amounts of tech. And, my technical knowledge was, pretty limited. You're kind of learning on the job. Therefore, working with really reputable suppliers that you can forge a really, really good relationship with was really important. So from an AV point of view, we worked with company called Broadsword, who's still now one of the largest production companies in the UK, and their owner Bruce Teggett, he actually started his business after hearing that I was starting my business and saying, will you use me for all of your AV? So we kind of, we grew and learned together.
Fantastic. Is there anything on, obviously you're doing something new, relying on a lot of people. Is there anything, any like observation or skill that you learned you want to pass on about like building relationships and gaining trust?
Um, when I set AOK events up, I can't remember who it was, but somebody recommended that I read a book called Building a Happiness-Based Business.
Okay.
And it's by an Australian dentist called Paddy Lunt. Really
Right.
good book. It's only about 100 pages long. And I'll tell the sort of outline of the story without spoiling it in case anybody wants to go out and buy it. But I think the profession of dentistry in Australia attracts the highest suicide rates of any profession
Wow.
throughout the whole of Australia. And one evening, due to litigation, people being late, complaining, staff abuse, all sorts of reasons, having to spend your day looking in people's mouths, for anything else. One day, he wasn't really considering jumping off the bridge at Sydney Harbour, but he found himself just kind of, looking out over the harbour, and he decided that he wanted to do everything differently from how the rest of the industry did. So he wrote to 90% of his customers, the ones that he didn't really like working with, to say, "I'm really sorry, I've decided to do things differently. Here's the names of 3 other dentists in Sydney. Good luck, and here are your dental records." And to the 10% that he did enjoy working with, he kind of wrote to them to say, "Look, I love having you as a customer, but things are going to change. It's going to get a little bit more expensive, but we're going to create a customized experience that makes you enjoy coming to the dentist rather than dreading it." And within 5 years, he had the largest dental practice across the whole of Australia. He'd gone from just one in Sydney to every city throughout, the whole of Australia. And it really left a mark on me. And I think the way that I've always interacted with my employees and the way that we have always interacted with our customers has been based on giving outstanding customer service, being as kind and thoughtful and empathetic as we possibly can, and treating every single event, regardless of its size, as if it's the most important event in the world.
Brilliant. So how do you ensure that how do you attract a team that's got that philosophy, and also how do you then keep them? Because you've kept some people for like 24 years.
Yeah. Firstly, we recruit solely on culture
Okay.
and not on what their CV says. I know within 3 minutes, 2 minutes of somebody walking through the door, if they're an AOK event sort of a person.
What do you look for to know that?
Attitude,
Okay.
attitude, can-do attitude. Is somebody prepared to go the extra mile to ensure that a client's event is perfect? And you can't teach that.
Right.
You can encourage it, but people either, turn up at 9 and leave at 5:30, or turn up at 8:30, make everybody a cup of tea in the office, put the radio on, create the right, vibe in the office, and make sure that if there is somebody staying late, that they're not there on their own. What can we do to help you so that you can get home a bit earlier? Those things are they're really hard to coach. People either want to be that sort of person or not. So I think from an early day, I recruited people that I thought were just going to be really good at selling events or really good at organizing events that were going to be great brand ambassadors for AOK events, and were always prepared to go the extra mile in terms of delighting a client.
How did you find those people?
You just interview like crazy. And nowadays,
job boards or
no, I think we've only paid a recruiter once in 24 years, and we're lucky in that we now have, a pretty great reputation, particularly now that we've won awards for being a great place to work. So that really helps. But we've got a big social media, profile as well. So if I put an ad on sorry, can I pause the interview very quickly, Jamie? I've only paid for a recruiter once in 24 years. We've got a large social media following. We've obviously won awards for our work. And when we put an ad out, I think we're really prescriptive about the type of person that we're looking to recruit. So we're looking for personalities to apply for a job rather than skill sets. Uh, as I said, we're a pretty simple business. Nearly all of our roles are either selling events or organizing events. And the organizing events, I've got the most fantastic operations director, Charlie Tanner. You know, she can do the finishing touches to making sure that people that work for her organize events in the way that AOK events like to organize. But we know relatively quickly whether somebody's got those assets of being thorough, attention to detail, personable, having the ability to talk to the CEO 1 minute, the cleaner the next, all of those skills that event managers need to balance or event manager on the job. And sales is sales. I mean, if somebody's got some sales experience, most people much prefer selling corporate hospitality or parties or conferences or incentives than they do pensions or greenhouses or vegetables. So what we sell is a relative, at the moment I've got a team of people selling Oasis Hospitality and Wimbledon. Now,
Right.
It's much easier calling a client up and saying, "Hi, are you interested in going to see Oasis?" than it is cold calling someone and trying to sell them Encyclopedia Britannica or a pension, because most people are pretty receptive to the biggest event of the year. But I don't regret for 1 minute recruiting based on culture rather than on skill sets, because we can teach skill sets. Culture is it's an old hackneyed phrase, but if you're only as good as the weakest member of your team, don't have any weak members.
Sure.
And weak members culturally is as important as weak members from a skill point
Sure.
of view.
So in terms of the skill set, you said that obviously culture, but not the skill set. But obviously, you'd want someone to have the skills enough to deliver value within a certain time frame. And what time frame would that be? Would it be months, weeks, or years that you're willing to wait for someone to be in a position to deliver value?
For a salesperson, we'll give them 18 months.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. We're not interested in. So there's another really important part to the equation, is that we try as often as possible to recruit from the bottom,
Right.
so that somebody who's been there before gets pushed up.
Okay.
So as part of attracting and retaining talent, there's nothing more demoralizing than working for a company for 4 years, I believe, and then them recruiting a load of people above you, so that your route to a more senior position, a higher salary, suddenly has a number of more roadblocks in it than it did before.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
we try and recruit relatively junior people, either from university or first jobbers or something like that. And they start relatively near the bottom. And we have quite a flat hierarchy anyway, so it's not like there are layers and layers and layers of promotions that you have to go through. But we try and recruit people. So if we take on a new event manager, we get somebody relatively junior. Somebody else might have to step up a little bit from a seniority or move on to slightly bigger jobs. And that's the way that we've always recruited.
So what's your tips for the listeners on management and leadership?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. Throwing that out very quickly. I think from a management leadership, they're similar but slightly different. I think from the very start, you can only ask your employees to do something if you're prepared to do it yourself. And I think that good leaders are, in early, leave late, can do attitude. Always, if somebody asks for some help, always volunteer to some help. Don't be afraid to make all of your team a cup of tea, in the morning, actually delivering cups of tea and saying what you're up to today. You end up getting great feedback from people. You can pick up if somebody's, it doesn't look quite right. Somebody might say, actually, can we have a cup of tea in private? There's something I'd like to talk to you about. So I think the golden rule: you can't ask anybody to do anything if they work for you if you're not prepared to do it yourself. I think we've been really, really open from a communication point of view about company performance, so much so that people are invested in, we set monthly targets for the business, we set annual targets. Everybody's aware of, what those are. They understand how we're tracking. If we're behind or ahead, everybody understands, what that means to everybody. So I think having really good open communication around your strategy, how you're performing against that strategy, is really good, and just trying to be as
That's showing the
authentic
bad
as
stuff.
possible.
Is that showing the bad stuff as well as the good stuff?
Oh, for sure. I mean, let's take COVID, as an example. From March to June 2020, my shareholders and I lost 1.5 million quid, every penny that we'd earned or saved over 20 years of running the business. And we had 45 staff on our payroll. We had to make 31 of them redundant. Two girls were on maternity leave. We kept them on the payroll because we felt that we had a duty of care as humans rather than employers, not to make them redundant whilst they were both,
Sure.
having children for the first time in their lives. You got to look yourself in the mirror when you go to bed at night, as much as anything else. But we kept the 11 people who we thought were the most creative, dynamic, and nimble, who had the ability to find ways to send clients invoices after my kind of creative director and I worked out the way that we were going to navigate COVID through selling virtual events.
Okay. So how do you get into that then? How did you kind of come out as an idea, test it, and then get a return from virtual events during COVID?
This guy Dan Wheeler and I chatted by mid-April, early May. We brainstormed for an hour each day, of maybe longer, of just trying to come up with ways that we thought we could send invoices, stay alive, but also help our clients find a way to keep communication going with their customers as well as their staff. I think at the start we were not overly creative, but we did do an awful lot of virtual wine tastings. A friend of mine ran a really good wine business, and I think we sent out I think around 25,000 quarter bottles of wine over 2020. So we were sending out 6 quarter bottles of wine to people with cheese and biscuits, with branded hampers. And people could kind of catch up with clients and staff members whilst having a glass of, California versus France, or white v red, or rosés, or whatever it was. But actually, LinkedIn have been a really great client of ours for 10 or 15 years. We always used to organize a big Halloween party for them in real life every October, but we talked with them and they did a virtual Halloween party in October with the same budget as if they would have had a in real life one, and that was a pretty major deal. But we were booking just so many acts and artists as part of that virtual event. Eventually, we started going out to all of our other clients with all of these virtual acts or artists. So one of them ended up being Joe Wicks, who did a series of online exercise classes
Very
for us. And then we started booking footballers and golfers to do watch-alongs of football and golf events that were taking place behind closed doors. You're probably a similar age to me. In our summer holidays back in the 80s, there used to be a program called Why Don't You?
Yeah.
So we had a client, a building firm, that in early 21, for instance, they had a lot of quite young staff with young children that were really struggling to work during 9 and 5 because everybody was homeschooling. their
Yeah.
kids because the schools were all shut, and they wondered if there was anything that we could do to help them. So in the February half term in 2021, we create. I remembered that. Why don't you, get off your bum and do something less lazy instead? I think was the full title, and we came up with this virtual kids club, and from 9 till 5 each day for 2 weeks over that on Monday to Friday of that half term. Employees were able to book their children from the age of 3 to 16 into virtual classes ranging from 9 till 10 o'clock was always the little ones, and there was storytelling, but we hired, two fantastic actors, and Dungeons and Dragons, and kids were running all over the house and getting their best fancy dress on, and then there were drawing competitions and all that sort of thing. Through to the end of the afternoon, we were doing hip hop dance classes with like really well-known hip hop artists. And I think and this building company allowed all of their staff from across the world to register their kids for it. But we had thousands of people
Wow.
join.
It's fantastic there, and a very
Yeah.
challenging time. So what percentage of your events now are virtual?
Zero.
Oh, I see. Everyone's gone totally back to in person.
Our clients have gone back to, I mean, there are some conferences which are streamed,
Right.
and people can join those for sure.
Is that both in person and virtual? It's never 100% virtual. It's
But
both.
we don't do any,
Right.
well, less than 1%. The odd one. There's a betting company that we work with that have
That
teams.
because they've got a global workforce. Is that
Yeah,
why?
who've got a global workforce. We do some virtual team building events with them, but less than 1%. And the benefit that event companies have had from, if you've survived COVID, another really important thing to say, for your listeners is that because we ended up being the most creative agency in London in 2020 and 21 in terms of coming up with really creative virtual events to allow brands to keep in touch with their employees and their staff, we won so much new business. So not only did we do this for our existing customers, but people would say, oh my God, I heard about this virtual Halloween event. We want to do a Halloween Christmas party. Heard about that kids club. We were doing massive activation around Christmas.
So
We
is there
set
some
up
new clients there that then stayed with you after COVID?
Oh yeah, no, we're absolutely the beneficiaries of that.
Wow.
And then suddenly when live events came back, there was this tsunami of interest in having a summer party and going to a corporate hospitality. We all missed seeing our friends and family and clients so much that there's just been, since 2021, events have been a considerably more popular component of a brand's marketing budget than they were before, and we're the absolute beneficiaries of that, in that all of our old clients are doing lots of live events again, but all of the new ones as well.
Fantastic. That's great. So congratulations on winning the Great Place to Work award. That's fantastic. Can you just share with listeners, what you've done to get to that place where you've become such a great place to work, and also be recognized for it?
Yeah. So I think, having the best workplace culture possible, is the absolute foundation stone of winning an award like that. I mentioned earlier, we kept the 11 employees that had the best cultural assets
Right.
to do whatever it took to help keep AOK events alive. And they're the ones that live and breathe our values day in, day out. And we're quite articulate to new employees about what behaviours we expect and what are not allowed. We actually have an incentive that we've run for the last 3 years, which is target led. But if the company hits a stretch target, and importantly, if our employees individually have all, shown the characteristics that we expect of them, then we'll take people away for a weekend somewhere nice. So I think we went to Slovenia this year, Marrakesh, the year before. One of the most powerful things that we did was to tell a girl 18 months or so ago that she wasn't on the trip. because she didn't show the necessary characteristics that we expected of an employee, but we gave her a second chance.
Right.
And that really was a turning, that was where she actually changed her attitude.
Brilliant.
And we're very much the beneficiaries of that.
Yeah.
So quite a lot of it is intangible. It's not there's not a piece of paper that says you got to do this, you got to do that.
Yeah.
It's just people either get it or they don't get it, Jamie.
Sure. Sure. So when you did that to that employee, did you think there might have been a risk of losing them, or were you confident they would then change their attitude and then come on board?
No, we were prepared to lose her, but we were confident that she was young, and I think we were her first job, and she just didn't necessarily. Maybe we weren't quite as prescriptive, during her induction as we should have been, but we found it relatively easy.
That sounds like a great way of developing someone. Is there any other like mini stories that you've got on how you've turned someone that wasn't doing what you wanted them to do in terms of attitude, etc., and kind of you transition them? Any other stories you've got on how you did that?
Yeah, I think not. I mean, I've got lots of stories about outstanding employee, behaviour and certain situations arriving that you could never coach or teach. We were doing a big product launch for an American shoe brand that has, I think the shoe brand is Hush Puppy. So they have Hush Puppy have a dog as its kind of logo, and we had to get a couple of dogs to come along to a conference as part of a catwalk show or something like that. And the client insisted that the handler brought these dogs into a coffee break, because everybody loves dogs, and thought it'd be quite nice to, for everybody to, pat the dogs and everything like that. Anyway, we did that, but there were some really senior people there. To my astonishment, this Basset hound did an enormous crap in the middle of 150 people, and this relatively new event manager that we had that was on the job without being asked just got a load of napkins, walked into the middle of the room, picked up this dog turd, and got rid of it. And that night I was talking to really big companies. I can't remember if they're sales director or their CEO, but he said to me, "You don't know how lucky you are that one of your members of staff is prepared to pick up a dog crap, to ensure that your event's going to work better." And we've kind of always used that story slightly jokingly as the benchmark for outstanding kind of employee behavior. But there are little moments like that happen day in and day out at our agency. Not as extreme as that. People looking after their colleagues or going out of their way to look after clients, just to make sure that we're being the best company that we can possibly be.
Fantastic. That's really, really, really good. So it sounds like you've taken the employee welfare and a stage further with the employee ownership trust, where people actually own the business. You want to just explain to people effectively what led you to do that and kind of how it's benefited you and the employees.
Yeah, absolutely. I think by the summer of 2022, we knew that financially we'd made back quite a lot of the money that we'd lost in COVID. I've got genuinely the best senior leadership team I could ever wish for at AOK events, and we had an offsite in the summer, and I was, I'm a soppy old so-and-so really, and I was so grateful that we hadn't just survived, but we'd thrived, and we were really ambitious about the future. That I said that I really wanted that some of these members of the senior leadership team who weren't shareholders of the company, I really wanted them to have some skin in the game at AOK events, and would they be interested? And they kind of all said, "Yep, that would be great. Love it at AOK events. We'd be really happy to stay there, etc., etc." So it took me 3 to 6 months to go through all the different ways that I thought I could incentivize these people to stay and have some skin in the game. What I particularly liked about employee ownership trust was that it applies to everybody. So I think once you've been an employee for a year, you automatically enroll as part of the trust. But the people who are the most senior and who have worked at the company the longest will ultimately be the biggest beneficiaries from any future profit, or if the company sells in the future. So that worked really well for my kind of senior leadership team. They were the ones that have worked there the longest, grafted the hardest, brought in the most revenue, or had the most responsibility from a kind of event delivery point of view. But then we've got a really I have a senior leadership team, and I have a junior leadership team as well, actually, who are the kind of the next lot of senior leaders within the company. And they were also, I talked to them, really excited about the possibility of having some equity in the company that they'd worked for maybe 4 or 5 years. And slightly selfishly, the way that an EOT works is, if you don't know, is that there's a valuation given on what the company might be worth in 5 years' time. HMRC signed that off. Then the company has 5 years to pay the shareholders the valuation from net profit that the company makes over the next 5 years. And when the EOT went live on October the 1st last year, I guess I was 53. So slightly selfishly, it gives me 5 years. So I'll be 58, when the EOT, pays out, everything to slow down, the number of days that I do over a 5-year period with AOK, transfer my knowledge to the senior leadership team, who will be able to take the business on and make it even better, hopefully, in the future, and to kind of tell that EOT story to as many people, both internally and externally, as another reason why AOK Events is a fantastic place to work, and a great, I believe the best privately owned event management company in the UK.
Fantastic. So would you be stepping down totally then in the 5 years?
I've gone down to 4 days a week from 5 days a week. I definitely think by next year I'll go down to 3 days a week. My senior leadership team are, really keen to learn the day-to-day runnings of the business, and to take that responsibility away from me. And actually, it gives me some time to learn some new skills myself. We're looking at growing, whether that's through acquisition, creating new products, or starting up new services. Over the last couple of years, we set up a fantastically successful entertainment business based on, we were booking so many virtual acts in 2020 and 21. We felt like we wanted to keep that momentum going. And we have this brand, AOK Entertains, based down in Exeter, that's going absolutely great guns, doing conference speakers, bands, DJs, etc. We've set up a destination management company last year, but we're also looking at growing through acquisition as well. So my role's changing slightly, but it is all around securing the long-term fiscal growth for the business.
So is that going to continue ongoing, or is there a point where you step away totally?
Well, I've just bought a little house in Devon, and I love it by the seaside. So at some stage, I'd like to spend more time there and get my golf a bit better. But having run AOK Events so happily for 24 years, it is just a part of me and who I am. And I genuinely consider a number of my colleagues and employees at AOK Events as some of my very closest friends and and confidence, and it's really hard to distance yourself from them altogether.
Fantastic. Is there any other, just finally, Alex, is there any other stories or tips you'd like to share with the listeners that people are generally interested in business, improving business, creating a successful business?
I think it's that I think being authentic is I've never let a client down in 24 years. So if we take corporate hospitality, for instance, which is about 40%, 35, 40%, of our business. It gets a reasonably bad rap. There are always stories in the paper about, at the moment, touts selling Oasis tickets for £7,000, £8,000, £10,000 or everything like that. In 24 years, I think we've sent over 250,000 people to various sporting events, concerts, etc. around the world. I've never had a complaint from anybody about where their ticket is, because I've always been able to tell them before they've gone there about exactly where they're sat. Right. Occasionally the red wine's cold and the white wine's warm. There's not an awful lot I can do about that. But we've built a business on having a small number of companies that use us a lot, rather than thousands of people that might use us once a year, because I think that's unsustainable. So I think having some customers that like you, that you trust, and that you think you might be able to grow with, and you can have some fun along the way, is a great starting place. And there are lots of one-man bands out there with one client, and that's absolutely fine. But back in 2010, 2012, I wanted AOK Events to be the biggest and best it could possibly be. And yeah, we've done a reasonably good job on getting it there.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Alex. It's been a great share to learn from someone that's been, in business for 24 years, had loads of awards, attracted some of the top brand names. And thank you for being open with the stories, both the good and the bad. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me, Jamie.